You may remember that after my video on the exchange between Chelsea Clinton and the Church of Satan on Twitter, the Satanic Church tweeted at both me and the rebel. Well, my old nemesis are back in the news after a group of Satanists brought an 8-foot satanic bronze statue to the Arkansas State Capitol to protest the 10 Commandments, and ideally the removal of them. The same goal of another man who claimed to be following Satan, who just a year before had a much more aggressive approach. I'm Ben Davies, this is Pure Hollywood. Last year, just 24 hours after the granite statue of the 10 Commandments was erected, it was destroyed by Michael Tate Reed, who said that Satan told him to do it. Well, now it seems like the Church of Satan and Satanists are back to finish the job. But this time, thankfully, with argument and protest. The only way that this should ever happen. To protest, they claim that their statue of Baphomet, a male-female winged goat creature thing that's toying with little children, should be displayed, obviously, next to the 10 Commandments. And this is to show that the state is not living up to its separation of church and state, as well as, quote, freedom of speech, which is weird because obviously they have the right to talk, they're doing it now, and they have the right to practice their religion anywhere. So now let's get into the debate in details, because this is actually somewhat of an interesting debate. First, did the government make you take part in the 10 Commandment Monument? No, it was privately funded, no taxpayer dollars went to this, and no Satanist was forced to have some of their paycheck taken away to make it. Which is how it's supposed to work. Good Lord, I wish the government would do this more often, where if I don't approve of something or take part in something, you don't get to take my money away and put it towards this. You know, like taking my tax dollars and putting it towards a Planned Parenthood or birth control. However, thankfully, in the 10 Commandment case, this was not the case. So then why was the 10 Commandment Monument approved and not the gross, disgusting looking statue? Two reasons. Yes, the gross satanic statue was privately paid for as well, but it still had to be sponsored and approved. That way there is a check and balance for any wealthy person not erecting any permanent gross pornography statue in any public place. Okay, but then why would they approve the 10 Commandments and not this statue? This is a common misconception of the separation of church and state. Please do tell me where any government agency makes you worship Jesus Christ. Oh, none? That's shocking. And separation of church and state does not mean separation of history and context. The reason we have the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is because of the 10 Commandments and the Bible. It's Judeo-Christian principles as well as some Aristotelian thought. You may take prayer out of the schools, but if you take Jesus Christ and the Bible out of American history and civics, then you are lying and doing a disservice to an entire generation. Where do you think the English common laws came from? Where do you think the inspiration and foundation of the Magna Carta came from? So there's both a historical and contextual reason for the 10 Commandments to be there on the state capitol. And no, you're not required to walk by and bow down to it. Separation of church and state. And there's a few reasons why it is so important to acknowledge this fact. Our founding fathers knew this to be true. At least recognizing the church and its values was a necessity to have a country of freedom and liberty. Don't ask me, ask our founding fathers. John Adams said, quote, "We have no government armed with power capable of contending with human passions unbridled by morality and religion. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people." Benjamin Franklin said, quote, "Only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters. Whereas true religion and good morals are the only solid foundation of public liberty and happiness, it is hereby earnestly recommended to several states to take the most effectual measures for the encouragement thereof," unquote. But all religions are the same. Well, let's just look at the 10 Commandments and compare it. Now, the first four, if you're not a believer, mean almost nothing to you, but let's look at the bottom 6. Honor thy father and mother. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Thou shalt not covet. Those seem like some really good things to live by if you're a free and prosperous nation, right? And the Church of Satan's commandments. Satan represents indulgence instead of absence. Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted on ingrates. Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. That sounds like the opposite, right? Satan represents man as just another animal, sometimes better, often worse. And my favorite satanic rule of the earth is number 11. When walking in open territory, bother no one. If someone bothers you, ask him to stop. If he does not stop, destroy him. These are some values Antifa should really be worried about. So with no historical or contextual claim, to the foundation of this country to have it in a public square on a state capitol, it would make sense that the 10 Commandments would be allowed to stay and not this grotesque statue. So yes, there is still separation of church and state, and yes, there is still a great reason to have the 10 Commandments here, because it is one of the foundational building blocks of the English common laws, the Magna Carta, and yes, our Declaration of Independence that gives you the freedoms to be able to practice whatever religion you want. But it's also important to know where these rights come from. They're not given by the government, they're enforced, they're given by God. And recognizing that is extremely important. And these values and principles are protected because the majority of this country and the founding fathers believe that you should be allowed to do, and we will stand firm in that because in God we trust. You may have heard that somewhere or seen it written. I'm Ben Davies. This is Pure Hollywood.
And another fantastic news, you can now download the Rebel app and take me with you wherever you go to get exclusive content in the entire Rebel lineup.